Good day and welcome back to The Shed. Today we go back to 2001 to take a look at the Hugo Award winning novel for that year. And there's honestly not much I can say that hasn't already been said about this one, because I'm speaking of J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter novel, The Goblet of Fire. So I don't think I can honestly do what I normally do and provide a spoiler-free plot overview, because just about anyone out there is very familiar with this novel, if not the movie. So I won't be doing that, and I don't really want to speak to my likes and dislikes, because I think that's been done so much on YouTube already that I don't think I'll be adding my voice to that mix in any meaningful way. Nor can I put this one to the memory test, because I honestly think that this one can't be done fairly, because it's so well spoken of and it's so publicized that I don't think I can give it justice without affecting the others that we already have on the board. So what I've done instead is come up with 10 characteristics that I think define the Hugo Awards, and we'll put this one to the test to see how many of those can we actually tick off the board to see whether or not this one was truly a Hugo Award winning novel. So the first one we'll talk about, and maybe we'll put a tally right here, is Speculative Innovation. So many of the novels on the board really break the mold. They're really taking you to that far away, fantasy or science fiction realm, the concept that I've talked about so many times with these wonderful novels. And does this one really innovate? Is there something truly new in Harry Potter's Goblet of Fire that we haven't seen before, as far as the magic system, as far as, alternate timelines that we've seen so many times on the SCI-FI Shed ladder, or when it comes to just groundbreaking science fiction, hard science facts. And I'd have to say that this one gets a big I don't think it really broke any innovations. Not to say it's not a wonderful novel, but I just don't think I can tick the box on that particular criteria. The other one I'm going to talk to is world building. So many times on the SCI-FI Shed ladder, we've read some wonderful novels that are so immersive when it comes to their world building, like Red Mars, like so immersive that paints this beautiful picture. And to, some of you might be surprised who've been following me for a long time, like N.K. Jemisin's world. Those are some pretty immersive worlds, really wonderful fantasy or science fiction worlds that draw you in and make you want to read that. And can I give this one, Harry Potter's Goblet of Fire, the tick when it comes to world building? And I'm going to have to say, yeah, we'll put this on this side. I think it does get the tick. There is some pretty interesting world building in the Harry Potter novels, particularly Goblet of Fire. So I'm going to give that one the nod and say, yeah, that one gets a tick. The other one I want to take a look at is genre fluidity. Does this one really do that? When we compare it to novels like Gene Wolfe's The Book of the New Sun, that was truly a genre fluid, genre bending novel, right? Where we have science fiction and fantasy so integrated. The likes of Ursula Le Guin's with The Dispossessed and The Left Hand of Darkness that blur the lines between literary fiction and science fiction. So many wonderful novels like that. The City and the City that comes to mind as well, between that weird fiction and science fiction. So many novels on the board that sort of really you can define as genre fluidity. That this one, the Yiddish Policeman's Union that we just spoke of recently. I mean, these are the novels that I would categorize in that having those characteristics. But this is not one of them, so I'm not going to give it the point. This one goes on this side with a bit of an X next to it. The other one that I wanted to talk to is social political commentary. Now, this one is straightforward. There's definitely none of that. And the books that come to mind are the likes of Robert Heinlein in A Stranger in a Strange Land and his novel Starship Troopers, right? Really pushing that social political commentary. And there's just none of that in Harry Potter's Goblet of Fire. So again, this one got a bit in that particular category. Because this one is really targeting a young adult audience, and the next couple of books we see are starting to talk more to an adult reader base as well. The other point is character depth. We see it so many times on the SCI-FI Shed ladder. The books by Connie Willis, the books by Lois McMaster Bujold. Recently we reviewed not Verna Vinge, what's the name? Joan de Vinge's Snow Queen, right? Books that really have wonderful characters that draw you in. Now, I'm going to have this give this one the nod when it comes to Harry Potter. I believe there are some really interesting characters in Harry Potter, and as the series builds, you really do get to see some wonderful characters in the Harry novels, in the Harry Potter novels. So I'm going to put this one in this side of the board and give a bit of a tick as a novel that is definitely got some interesting characters and characters that you fall in love with. The other category I want to talk to is narrative boldness. Now we see this with John Brunner's Stand on Zanzibar. Novels that just draw you in because of the way they're structured. Just wonderfully written novels like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Now, I just can't put Harry Potter, The Goblet of Fire amongst that league that I've defined that category for me. So again, this one gets a big as not really fulfilling that category. The other point I came up with was cultural relevance. So many times on this channel when reading vintage novels, I've made the note that, just a little bit of research, finding out about the times and when these novels were written in, just draws you in and makes you understand where the author's state of mind was in, to understand why some of these concepts that they came up with and what they were exploring was so culturally relevant that adds to your reading enjoyment. Now, I can't say that this, again, falls into that category. There's nothing here of any real cultural significance. I think it defined a new culture in many ways, but there's nothing really cultural significant in this novel that allowed me to give it a tick. So again, this one got a bit of a next to the cultural significance. The other category I came up with was community resonance. Now, this one gets full marks. For those of you who don't know how the Hugo voting system works, it's basically the World Science Fiction Society that you can participate in voting by joining one of their world conferences, the Worldcons, becoming a voting member, and you can go and vote for some of these novels. Now, I hope to do that in future years, so I might document my experience there, but it is a fan-driven voting system. So it got full marks. But obviously by this stage, the Harry Potter novels were very popular, and that would definitely give it a big tick here as one of the reasons that this one may have won a Hugo Award. The other category I came up with was the series impact or the standalone prowess. Now this one is definitely not a standalone novel, and it was a series that was ongoing, but I think I did give it a tick for the series impact because I think that overall the novels that preceded this and this one did have enough momentum there, like we saw on so many other novels on the board, that I think it was probably rewarded because of this series as a whole, as it stood at that point in time. So I did give it the green tick for the series impact. And the final concept was that literary quality. And for me, this one, I gave it the X. There was nothing bad with the writing. It's not a badly written novel, but I can't compare it to some of the wonderful written novels on the board. The likes of, Gene Wolfe, the likes of Clark, the like of Asimov, Heinlein, Vinge, so many wonderful written novels. Zelazny, right? So many wonderful written novels on that board that I couldn't give this one the tick as it's something that just won the Hugo because of just how beautifully it was written. So this one got the X. Did this novel deserve a Hugo Award? Maybe before we say yes or no to that, maybe we should look at some of the contenders, some of the finalists for that year. And we have George R.R. Martin with A Storm of Swords. Now that wasn't really wonderful novel, but one of my pet peeves about that is finish the series, right? George R.R. Martin finished the series. You owe it to your fans who have been so faithful for so long. Finish the series. And in retrospect, I would have been so disappointed if George R.R. Martin had won a Hugo for A Storm of Swords, because I honestly feel that you owe it to your fans to finish that one. So at least we can say that J.K. Rowling did finish the series, and my daughter absolutely loves this series and she loved the way it ended. So I'm going to say that, if I was to compare these two with hindsight, I would say that I would give it to J.K. Rowling as well. There was A Calculating God by Robert J. Sawyer, who has been featured a couple of times on the Sci-Fi Shed. I've actually not read that one, so I can't comment, but maybe some of you who have. Is this a worthier novel than what we saw in Robert J. Sawyer? We also have Midnight Robber and The Sky Road by Naylor Hopkinson and Ken MacLeod, respectively. I've not read those either, so I can't comment as to whether or not those would be better novels, but I'd love to hear your opinion. What were your thoughts? Were those worthier novels? You've heard my thoughts on George R.R. Martin's A Storm of Swords, which was honestly a beautiful novel. I absolutely love that. I'm just a little bit bitter because I want to see an end to this wonderful series. But anyway, the marketing strategy. Can I make a book on J.K. Rowling without talking about her marketing strategy? Now, I'm going to have to say, there's just no way you can do that. And if you're an avid writer and you're an ambitious person who wants to get a really good novel out there, pay close attention to how J.K. Rowling marketed that novel, because she is a masterclass in marketing when it comes to these novels. And I'd say do a bit of research. Learn how she went about building the hype, about building secrecy, about building a royal fan base. And I think you'll come a long way in adding some of that beautiful ingredient that she used in her marketing to your novel to help you succeed. We've got to rank it on the Sci-Fi Shed later. Let's flip the cameras around and see where this one lands tonight. So we're back to the Sci-Fi Shed ladder to rank today's Hugo Award winning novel for 2001. And where will Harry Potter's The Goblet of Fire rank amongst these wonderful novels? Now, for a very, very long time, even as I started my journey on the Sci-Fi Shed, I had it in my mind, having read The Goblet of Fire, that this one was going to be at the bottom of the list. But I've honestly changed my mind. And there's a couple of things that have made me do that. I've applied my criteria consistently for all these novels, and I've tried to be honest and transparent. And when I look at the concept and the execution and the characters and the writing, when I apply my full criteria, if I'm completely honest, I don't think it's going to be my least favorite novel that I've read on the Sci-Fi Shed. And that has surprised me and surprised my daughters, because I've always said to them, they've asked me several times over the years, "Oh, Dad, what do you reckon is going to be the worst novel on your list?" And for a long time, I was saying it'll be Harry Potter, The Goblet of Fire. But I've changed my mind. So where is it going to land when we look at the board? Because, you know, what is interesting about Harry Potter? She's built some really interesting and wonderful characters that you do fall in love with time. Now, I've not read all the Harry Potter novels. I've read the first one, The Philosopher's Stone, a couple of times, and I've read this one for the first time ever for this Sci-Fi Shed. Now, when I apply my criteria, the only one that I couldn't outright say what do I feel about it was the memory test. And that's because I don't feel I can be honest and transparent, because there's just so much advertising. These novels are so popular, they've been talked about so often, that I really couldn't say, do I remember Goblet of Fire because of all the marketing, because of all the hype, because of the movies, or because of the literary quality of this novel. So I gave it some pretty average marks when it comes to that. But the characters were fine. It got some pretty average marks for the concept. I don't think there's anything new in Harry Potter. I mean, but the magic system at times does excite you. And I like that. I mean, Voldemort, the villain, is just the villain you love to hate. And the mystery behind it keeps you reading, it keeps you engaged. And I gotta say, it's not the worst of the novels, because I can't say that of N.K. Jemisin. But I will say this of Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling's as a comparison. I was grateful that N.K. Jemisin wrote the series that she did, because she drew in so many new readers that I'm sure are readers today because of the wonderful work that she's done here. And I don't want to take away from N.K. Jemisin. It was definitely not my cup of tea, but I can understand why people would have loved that novel. And I've got to say the same for J.K. Rowling. It's not my cup of tea, but I can definitely see why people love this. My daughter being one of them. My daughter is absolutely a huge fan of Harry Potter, having read all the novels when she was younger. So I've got to say that it did appeal to a lot of people, and there are so many people out there in the millions that will have fond memories of reading Harry Potter. So I'm going to have to give it some kind of recognition for that. And I think it is a better novel than any of the Stone Earth novels. So we're not looking at the bottom of the bunch. But what about Slow River? I'm going to have to say the same. I enjoyed Snow River for different reasons, but I'm going to have to say I enjoyed Harry Potter more. The Falling Woman by Pat Murphy. You know, if I'm again honest, I'm going to say, surprisingly to me, that I'm going to give it to Harry Potter again. Because it is a fun novel. It is an interesting read. It's captured the imagination of just young adults and adults alike. And I'm going to have to say that's not the truth. That you can't say that for The Falling Woman or Slow River. But that's where I'm going to end it. Or is it The Healer's War? Again, I'm going to have to say no to The Healer's War again, because that was a really enjoyable novel, but it was a forced fantasy theme. It wasn't fantasy, it was forced, and that really cheapened it for me. And there's nothing forced about Harry Potter. It is fantasy. It is, maybe just your hyped up or overhyped novel, but it is at least fantasy, and there's no denying that. Hominids, not ending with my time. Nah, I'm going to stop it there. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling, the Hugo Award winning novel for that year, surprised me. It surprised my daughters, but that's where we stand tonight. Hey, I hope you enjoyed that. Something a little bit different, because I think saying any more about J.K. Rowling, the plot, the likes and dislikes, it's just been said so many times that I thought I wanted to take a fresh new look at it. And that's where we stand tonight. So there you have it. Have you read Harry Potter? Did you feel the way I did about the novel? Are you surprised that it won a Hugo? Has this changed your mind? Would you now give it a go because of what I've said? Were you a long-time Harry Potter reader? Was this your first series of novels that made you a reader? Where did you go from there? I would love to hear from you. I've been Peter. This has been The Shed. I've still got this croaky voice from my past cold that I hope to get over soon. But I hope you join me next time in The Shed.